Welcome to the Tech Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Vincent, and on this podcast, I interview people in tech. As always, this show is sponsored by the consulting launch method, where I help experienced tech professionals build their own consulting business without spending years figuring out the business side. We've helped people go from their first idea to first client in 90 days and six figures in a year. To learn more, connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message. In today's show, our guest is Stuart Milligan. And he's the solution architect at Midrange Dynamics, where he invents, designs, and builds tools that are used to develop, manage, analyze, and modernize business applications written on IBM I platform. I thought it sounded very exciting. So, Stuart, looking back at your career, what's the decision or project that you are most proud of, and what made it stand out for you?
Probably, I had a company called Databro, and we had a product called XAnalysis. Was one of the original products that I built. Myself and my colleague Mark Tregear, we built a technology that essentially forensically understood very, very large complex applications. So the need for tribal knowledge and guesswork was gone, and you could make forensically based decisions to change things, fix things, or replace things. And I'd say that particular technology, it's still currently recognized as the world leader, although subsequently I sold that and I'm building a new variant of it to keep track of all the changes that have changed in technology and applications. But that probably was the biggest one, because it unlocked the potential of these large, complicated, legendary applications, as people call them, that run huge tracts of the world's fiscal and operational and commercial systems.
Yeah.
And so building that was probably my proudest. But more recently, I've been rebuilding new technologies, but that was probably the most significant one that I built.
Okay. And how long ago was this?
It started in 1987, and then we sold the company in 2013. So,
Okay.
yeah. And subsequent to that, I've been adding things on.
Yeah, fantastic. And more recently, since your current role at Midrange Dynamics,
Yeah, I mean, what happened
on?
with Midrange Dynamics, because one of the other things that happened is that the legacy applications, as people call them, that run on the mainframe and midrange systems, largely it was kind of a fortress mentality. It sort of went back to, socially, you might call it the feudal system, where during feudal and medieval times, everything was centered around the castle. So all the trade happened there, and everybody, operated from there. And legacy systems largely work that way, where the platform was designed to work in a sort of castle mode. It was isolated. But with modern application and the information age, you need to integrate. And more recently, after that, I've been building integration technology. So enabling faster, more effective, more secure mechanisms to integrate large, complicated existing applications. So systems of record, banking, financial, logistics, other operational systems. And that's what I've been doing since then. And the company that I'm part of now, Midrange Dynamics, the other key focus that we have, probably the primary key focus, is in the DevOps space. So managing change in an efficient, quality-based, effective manner.
Yeah. And this is your own company? Or
I'm a partner. I'm one of the principals in the company, myself and a couple of other guys. It was originally founded by the chap by the name of Michael Morgan back in the 80s, and it sort of crawled its way to the top of being, the world leader in this space for that particular platform.
Sounds very exciting. And the type of clients you're serving is
On the IBM platform, it's everything from banks to municipalities, insurance companies, operational logistics, retail. A bit of everything. It covers a very broad spectrum.
Yeah, fair enough. And if you were starting your tech career again tomorrow, right, knowing what you know now with all the tech changes and transitions that are happening, right, in this industry, that is never constant, right? So
Yeah.
what is the one thing that you would do differently? One thing you would say to your younger self?
It's probably learn more about the technologies. I think what we all tend to do is we sort of grasp enough knowledge of a particular technology to solve a specific problem, but rarely do we really absorb enough about the technology to solve a problem really well. That's probably, and I see that in the industry a lot, where you see the evolution of bad decisions on bad decisions, not really because people are incompetent, but largely because they didn't quite understand the context or, the purpose of a said technology, and it kind of just drifts off into what you call architectural evolution and a mess usually.
Yeah.
So learn
And
more about technology
the norm,
before you
okay,
start.
an example of where you see it's sort of not work out the way it should have or could
Well,
have.
I see it every day. I mean, literally for the last 30 years, I've been forensically analyzing large, complicated applications that have been around for 40 or 50 years. Really household names, large banking institutions, Europe, America, in the Far East, Africa. And I'd say that without exception, when I've run my technologies to forensically analyze, the observation that you make is that every single application looks like it started off with a kind of sound design principle, but then because of business pressures, turnover of staff, evolution of technology, investment in interesting things rather than practical things, just causes a mess to occur. So almost every day I look at the results of decisions that were made for sometimes the wrong reasons over the years, and usually it's about architecture or the application of technology in the right way. And so the disconnect between making a technological choice and what the business requirement is probably something that I see all the time. And when you look at something that existed for 40 or 50 years, it's a bit like, say, I mean, you live in Southampton, so go down to Southampton and look at the infrastructure, and then try and go into see the council and ask them for a blueprint on how the electrical system has worked out the city, and they'll sort of say, "Oh,"
Yeah.
not just because it's sensitive information, because it's difficult to get hold of, and often decisions are made without that sort of knowledge. So yeah, that's pretty much what I see all the time, which is, it's just the way that the world works.
Yeah.
And so understanding and what we tend to think about, and I think it's what people think about and want to do is they want to build new things. They want to change. They understand change. They need to respond to change. But often what they're doing is they're sort of starting at a sort of a zero position rather than accepting that they're actually not starting from zero. They're starting from an inherited level of complication. Sometimes because of pressure, people build on top of that because they need to solve the problem quickly, and they often don't revisit, should it work that way? So you end up with these massively complicated, problematic systems, not unlike, managing a city. If you think
Yeah.
about, trying to fix the underground in London, for example, that would be a complicated problem. And these large, complicated applications that run the world commercially, they're no different. It's people have changed over 30 to 40 years, and you've had a massive staff turnover index. You've had an evolution of knowledge and skill set and approach and design principles and preferences. And you end up with this unholy mess that, suddenly someone's charged with saying, well, make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels almost inevitable that that
Yeah.
situation occurs.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a piece of work that I did with a chap by the name of Grady Booch, who's the chief scientist at IBM and an incredibly intelligent man. And he said that there were nine things that you can do with software. You can leave it as it is, you can kick it down the road, you can throw it away, you can ignore it, you can do, and there's many things that you can do with it. And I think the reality is that I think what most people don't do is they don't accept that such a asset, if you like, actually has an intrinsic value. And they don't do that because they don't see it. They see only what is relevant to them. And I think that is a big inhibitor for a lot of companies. And continually, if you think that a modern business is completely dependent upon the information that it has, it used to be that if you had the best product, but these days, a lot of people can make products. And a lot of people can make good products, but the people that have control over their information are going to succeed. And so the information system becomes critical. And when the information system becomes so complex that you kind of don't control it any longer, the business really starts to struggle. And that's, a lot of what we see today. And a lot of the, startup companies, you start to see them reach a particular plateau where they get so big and their architecture is so complex and it's suffered from architectural erosion that it really does start to hamper the business. So yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I sort of I can see it happening basically. Yeah, I've already been in tech for 30 years, and it's like code upon code upon complexity on
Yeah,
top of
an
customers.
idea upon idea. And it's not that ideas are bad or innovation is bad. It's not that at all. But it's innovation in context. And I think what a lot of people do is because they want their job to be interesting and exciting, they'd rather build something new than fix something old.
Yeah,
Not always because they're irresponsible, but sometimes because something is so old that you can't fix it. So
yeah, and I know with the different characters that there different people are different characters. Some people are finishers, some people are just simply are good at starting projects, right?
absolutely.
And
Ideas people, completers, supporters, yeah.
yeah,
And also the culture within the company. You get different type of people, don't you? You get type of people that can sustain a business and you get people that can change a business. And the same applies to the slightly smaller microcosm of an application development stack.
yeah,
Someone that can change something is different from someone that can build something new. And often they struggle flipping between the two.
yeah. No, I agree with you. So what does the next chapter of your career look like, Stuart?
Well, I suppose AI was a very interesting injection, and interesting for me. It was kind of not as dramatic as it might have been because what I've been doing is developing algorithms based upon um, generic abstractions or models of an existing piece of language, which is kind of what AI is. A large language model essentially is an abstraction, one level above the implementation, based upon a prediction of what that particular piece of language, word, token, what it means. And so I've been writing software that does that so that you can actually then come up with a model and then make decisions based upon what you see with that model. But what I see happening is that people feel that AI isn't really that. It's just some way of actually getting another programmer to work faster, or more cheaply, not always more cheaply. And my focus, if you like, it now is to exploit AI to the maximum, whereby instead of having to run 100 trillion lines of code through, say, Anthropic's LLM learning model, which is an impossibility or never happen, is to provide technologies that make LLM more effective and basically like the Specsavers of AI. In other words, we give focus. So instead of having hallucination because they can't see the whole picture and it makes guesswork, you provide snippets of information in a structured way so that AI can then make good decisions based upon known proven architecture as opposed to doing guesswork and then spending forever trying to retrofit and understand what AI did in the first place. And so it's really underpinning the value of legacy applications by using automatically forensically gathered meta models that can be used in context of a context window in AI to make tasks more effective and more efficient. Because what's frustrating a lot of people at the moment is they think, well, AI can fix everything, and they chuck, AI at a particular problem they've got, and they think, wow, that produced something quite good looking and sophisticated quickly, but then they take forever trying to figure out how relevant and how it integrates. And so you can't say, well, every time I want to make a change in my HSBC banking application, I can't read 50 million lines of code because I'll never get anything done, even with LLM. So what I've got to do is provide a sort of meta map that can say, well, this is your starting point. That's what you're asking. How do the relevant bits count here and only give me the relevant information? And giving that accurately is a very, very important factor. And that's something that I'm building and have built actually is the ability to map very, very large, complicated applications into meta models that make hallucination a thing of the past for AI.
That sounds very exciting, and you can you kind of already doing that with mid-range dynamics, and is that the future of the company, that direction you're taking?
Well, it's kind of interesting because if you look at companies like Neo4j, Neo4j has been building meta models kind of for not just software, but for business purposes. So they've kind of got the technology stack that can do it across the board. But I think we'll expand into the mainframe after this. But the IBMI marketplace is big enough and rich enough not to um, you know, become so ambitious that you end up not achieving anything because your target is too big. So we're focusing on IBMI platforms at the moment, but we will be able to expand beyond that. And I think some of the patterns that we're using is already being used in various bits of technologies because we run over an entire platform where you've got to say complete application stack. It means that our tool set has to cover all bases. Whereas I think what you find in distributed computing, in modern distributed applications that have become legacy, I mean, there's legacy Microsoft applications these days that have got, hundreds of millions of lines of code. What you'll find is that because it's distributed, people are used to being able to take parts of it and, analyzing that and keep it in context. But large, complicated applications, where does the context end and where does it start? So maybe we can put it, on any platform, but I would argue that probably the most benefit is going to be on the legacy applications, mainframe and IBMI.
Fantastic. But we appreciate you being on the podcast today, Stuart. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
They just go to our website, midrangedynamics.com. It's quite a mouthful, but I'm sure we can put that on the link of your interview here. And
Fantastic.
We're happy to discuss
I recommend
everything.
people checking it out. Thank you so much for being on the show. And as a reminder to everyone listening, this show is sponsored by the Consulting Launch Method, where I help people, experienced tech professionals build their own consulting business without spending years figuring out the business side. We've helped clients go from a first idea to first client in 90 days and 6 figures within a year. To learn more, connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message. Until the next episode. Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.